Hello, my name is Franco. I will be your tour guide on your journey. Today, we will be opening our brand new YouTubers exhibit to the public for the very first time. We have recently uncovered an archive of video files from a professor from Washington named Colin Andrews, documenting his thoughts on said YouTubers. Thank you for being a part of the beta screening here, and we hope that you enjoy. Everyone put on your VR headsets, and we will begin. Welcome to the accountability. In the year 2020, the very popular website YouTube was housing a large amount of controversial creators, and while the year was very well remembered for the pandemic that took hundreds of thousands of lives and a social movement that was taking the world by storm, the internet was in shambles with cancellations everywhere. Some of the most popular creators on the platform were dethroned, and most importantly, there were a varied amount of approaches to the art of accountability. We are now approaching the first stop on our trip, the world-renowned Gata Colignano. I will now hand it over to Mr. Andrews. Enjoy the ride. The Gata Colignano, better known as Shane Dawson to the public, has found himself in about as deep of a hole as one can dig recently. While many people on Stan Twitter and fans of other creators that I enjoy have always championed Dawson, I have genuinely hated him from the moment I found his content. Maybe it's because I'm a film buff and my introduction to him was the 2014 smash hit Not Cool that was directed, written, and produced by him. The film contains many racist, sexist, and absolutely abhorrent jokes that no person who has a good heart inside of them could possibly make. One slip up is something that I can understand, but making a film filled with them is pretty ridiculous. So right out of the gate, I have despised him and the content he made, especially the so-called documentaries, calling them that pushes me to the brink of vomiting. In the past couple years, that seem to just be propaganda and puff pieces for his friends who have done incredibly heinous things, such as Tanacon, being a flaming racist, and the myriad of things that Jake has done wrong. So, rightfully so, I have stayed away from everything that had to do with him. Except for Garrett Watts, because that man is a treasure. And lo and behold, on June 21st, he brought a reckoning unto himself that I cannot imagine he was even remotely expecting. He released a statement on the James Charles, Tati, and Jeffree Star triangle of drama that happened in the spring of 2019 over, at the time, what seemed to be hair vitamins, and James Charles being an alleged predator to straight men everywhere. And although this section belongs to Shane, do not fret. The others will get their section as well. In the now deleted statement, he makes a very, not good statement, where he says that James was a young, egocentric, power-hungry guru who needed to be served a slice of humble pie the size of the Empire State Building. Now, my immediate reaction to this was, oh my god, you are a decade older than this guy. There's no reason for you to be involved. Please get a life and live your 30s in peace. Wow, I hate Shane Dawson so much. After that quickly blew over, I started to come to the bigger realization that most people on Twitter did. And that is that the comment essentially insinuates that the slice of humble pie that Shane is referencing is the sexual assault allegations that Tati Westbrook alleged in her video that started this whole thing, that were later proved to be false. Now, in what world does a teenager's life need to be ruined to provide humility, as opposed to an intervention or something in that vein? So, Twitter went kinda ballistic over that statement in particular, and the entire post to a lesser extent, demanding an apology. In response, Shane put out a statement saying, "I deleted everything. I'm done. For those who wanted me to address it, I did. I'm sure you can find it reposted somewhere, but I don't want this energy in my life or on my timeline. I'm too sensitive for this." and I'm done. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't really sound like an apology to me. And this statement embodies one of the biggest problems I have observed from Shane and people in this realm, which we will get to later. Regardless, the internet did not deem that fit, so they decided to do some digging, and if you know anything about Shane Dawson's history, it really isn't that hard to find the dirt. A multitude of clips resurfaced of him doing rather disgusting things, including simulating masturbation to a very underaged Willow Smith as a joke, saying the N-word more times than I can count, having an inappropriate conversation about sex with a 12-year-old, and being horribly offensive to every single minority group he could possibly think of. This led to him losing 1.2 million subscribers in a month, and YouTube basically dropping him in a way that they did with Logan Paul. If you look at his social blade, it seems that his monetization has been completely taken away, and he has deleted over 1 billion views on his channel to presumably wipe the videos in question from his channel. Which begs the question, how many offensive videos were out there if 1 billion views were deleted? With his channel and dignity bleeding out on the floor with nobody there to rescue it, Shane finally decided to step out into the spotlight, making a video titled, ironically, Taking Accountability. And, well, the like-dislike ratio should tell you all that you need to know, but I'm going to be throwing the majority of my input in here and dissect the reasons why this is a very, very, very bad response. The first thing that you may have noticed while I've been playing the intro to the video here is there are so many cuts. It's difficult to pick out if you're just casually viewing or listening to it, but most of the time there's a cut after every half a sentence, which is concerning to me. The reason for that is because the cuts mean either he is having a rather hard time memorizing the script for this video, or he is actively polishing these takes to garner as much sympathy as possible. Either option being pretty bad in my eyes. If he is doing a scripted apology, that loses some credibility and authenticity to me. And if he's doing multiple takes to get the most emotion-inducing product possible, well, it's pretty self-explanatory how scummy that is. The next point I have to make isn't my greatest point, but I think it might hold a good amount of weight. About a minute in, he says,
I saw Jenna Marbles' video, and it really inspired me, and felt like a sign from the universe that I want to do this.
With that sentence, in one fell swoop, the whole apology is null and void. If you are apologizing because another YouTuber who has committed much lesser evils than you have did, and not because you yourself felt the need to after seeing how many of your fans you've hurt and the amount of backlash that you are receiving, this is not an apology for your audience, it is an apology for you. Seriously, imagine that a kid diddler posted an apology for diddling kids. Then another kid diddler posted an apology saying he was inspired by the other kid diddler. That means that you are not apologizing because you actually feel remorseful for the things that you have done. You just saw the positive reaction that the other person received and thought that you could pull the wool over your audience's eyes just one more time. And to be fair, you did. There are still people out there who are supporting you and coming to your defense. I could end this here as I feel like my point is made, but I want to dig deeper. The next point I would like to make is when he starts discussing the blackface jokes, wherein he makes a statement saying,
And I started seeing black people who I know, who I'm friends with, who I've known for a long time. I'm seeing them openly talking about on their Instagram or Twitter the years of anger they've had about racist jokes, about blackface, about, microaggressions, everything that they've gone through. And I felt like the biggest piece of shit in the entire world.
Once again, here, the Gata Coliono completely misses the mark of what an apology is supposed to be. I don't know about you, but the message I got here is that, I didn't feel bad about it until multiple people explicitly pointed out that I had done something very wrong. This could be a result of a couple of things in my opinion, and keep in mind that this is just speculation. One, he has an incredibly low threshold of awareness about social issues, which directly goes against what he portrays in his videos. Or two, can you think of what someone who isn't aware of the repercussions of their actions until they are directly called out on it could possibly be called. Perhaps the reason that he was pressing the sociopath narrative and the reason that he had such a vehement and frantic response after the discussion with Katie Morton in the Jake Paul series could be a deflection method. I'm just saying. I've seen crazier things happen, and that would explain a lot of things that we talked about and we will talk about in regards to the lack of apology until he gets called out and finds what he thinks is an opportune time to make an apology. Projection is crazy, isn't it? Also, another general point, he uses such incredibly manipulative language throughout the video. For example, when further discussing the history of blackface, he says this statement.
And the fact that I, in some way, was a part of that, like the fact that the word blackface now will forever be attached to me, that's the level at which I have been lately. Just feeling very awful about myself, about what I did, about the jokes I've made, about the videos I've made.
Once again, Shane Dawson is making himself the victim in his own apology video, if you can even believe that. When a creator says that they are feeling awful about themselves, no matter what the context is, that will elicit somewhat of an emotional response from everyone upon initial impact. However, feeling bad about oneself does not equate to them feeling bad for what they have actually done. Plus, through saying in some way and stuttering while doing it, he not only portrays himself as nervous about the video, but he also manages to, once again, skirt around the subject. And through doing this, he's utilizing something that I absolutely hate and is my main problem with him. Shane Dawson is a self-proclaimed empath, yet I don't think that's what it is. I think that Shane Dawson has a savior complex. If you look at all of the people that he has made documentaries on in recent times, that would be Jeffree Star, Tana Mongeau, and Jake Paul. Now, what do all of these figures have in common? Well, if you said that they all have had a controversial past, you would be correct, but more importantly, when Shane made his documentaries about them, they had bottom out with support from their audiences. People hated Tana for TanaCon, Jake for insert one of many stints here, and Jeffree for his shadiness and, once again, controversial past. So what does Shane do? He swoops in, he provides an outlet for them to show their true selves, he provides a shoulder to cry on, and after the documentary is over, the internet forgives the subject until a couple of months pass and they return to their same ridiculously awful behavior. But Shane doesn't care about that. He doesn't stand by his friends unless it's a situation where he can be viewed as a good guy by the internet. And if he is so disgusted by the person that he used to be, why does he continuously associate himself with people who have done the exact things that he's disgusted about? And in the brief section where he discusses the specific issue, he plays it smart and focuses on the race card and refers to what he's doing as just being friends with some people who have done some bad things, instead of admitting that he has enabled some of the worst people on the internet to maintain prominence and influence on future generations, which can have an incredibly detrimental effect on separating reality from what people see these influencers get away with. Next, in the middle of the video, he starts to discuss the kid diddler jokes, and although he says that he shouldn't have been making those jokes about it in the first place, the reasoning he gives for it is that he translated his childhood pain into these dark jokes and says that instead of doing such, he probably should have just gone to therapy earlier instead. If you look in the comments, many people have made this point, as it is one of the easier ones to make. So I will just rehash it a tad. Shane, having a traumatic childhood and making copious amounts of problematic jokes about kid diddling is not a cause and effect relationship. If you are the empath that doesn't have an ounce of hate in his heart, you would use your experience in order to benefit and empower your audience. I know people who are doing that in their teenage years, and you were 24 years old when you put out Not Cool. You had to have known that there is a very clear-cut line between dark, edgy humor and just being blatantly offensive. In fact, while I was looking more into this while writing the script, I found a clip of you and your ex-girlfriend, who should also be held accountable for being an enabler and active participator, where you're mimicking iCarly and she puts on a mask representing a black man and you beat her with a baseball bat. In all honesty, I don't know if I've ever seen a more tasteless joke in my time on the internet. Sorry, I'm getting off track. Let's go back to the apology video, because believe it or not, we have even more to discuss. Towards the final quarter of the video, he decides to bring up the now deleted tweet that I previously brought up. And although he does directly apologize to James, there's a specific point that, once again, kind of revokes any sentiment of apology that he's attempting to get across, and even further solidifies that his empath persona is simply fraudulent. He says of the so-called essay,
which I wrote it to be funny. It didn't come across that way. It came across very angry, which it was, but it was also supposed to be funny.
If one is a true empath, do you think that they would be either portraying a situation of a man almost losing everything and being viewed as a predator over false accusations in a humorous manner, or have frustration toward a situation where he faced close to zero repercussions? I don't think so. In fact, do you know who is probably rightfully upset and could have very easily made a video cashing in on all of this? James Charles himself. Yet he didn't, and I find it crazy that someone a decade younger than the man on trial here has more restraint than Shane Dawson ever has had. And because this is a perfect transition and we have just about covered my issues with the apology, let's delve into the final bit of information that is crucial to understanding the manipulativeness and lack of accountability of Shane Dawson. The evidence, of course, is the roughly 2-minute IG live of Shane reacting to Tati's apology video, which we will be covering at a later date. If you didn't think that he could completely shatter any remnants of credibility he was hanging onto in that short of a time span, you are in fact sorely mistaken. If you look up what it means to be an empath, the commonly accepted definition is that an empath is someone who is hypersensitive to others' emotions, so much so that they start to absorb and or feel the feelings of the other person. Yet, when Shane jumps in on the stream, he is absolutely livid, and the video is at about the 25-minute mark, which means he has already watched over half of her apology, with Tati, whether it is real or not, crying and being an emotional wreck. By definition, an empath would absorb that emotion and, I would have to imagine, would feel awful about the fact that they put the person in that position, whether warranted or not. Alas, Shane does a couple of things here that show zero amount of awareness or care whatsoever. First of all, he calls her out for fake crying, when he definitely used very similar manipulation tactics in his apology video as well. Then, in an act of sheer stupidity and heartlessness, he goes as far as to scoff at Tati when she brings up her sexual assault experience, and barely catches himself from saying, "Shut up," and transitions the shh sound into "oh my god." Immediately afterwards, he calls her manipulative, which is just another instance of someone in a glass house throwing a stone, as he brings up his traumatic past as an excuse for kid diddler jokes. And then, adding even more fuel to the fire, he says that he was molested in a manner that seemed like a comparison, which is not only completely unnecessary, but also holds himself to the standard of a role model, and as a survivor, he should not be minimizing another survivor's experience just because she is on the other side of this pointless beef. That just shows even more that Shane is very clearly not the person that he wants everyone to think he is. Then, he follows that up by saying that's not before trailing off. This part is only my speculation, so take it with a grain of salt, but it seems like he was going to finish the sentence by saying, "That's not an excuse," which is hilariously ridiculous to me, as that is exactly what he did in his apology video, when he uses his childhood as an excuse for his kid diddler jokes. Almost immediately after that, Ryland realized the grave he was digging himself, because he got him off live within 15 seconds. And that has been it concerning Shane Dawson for the moment. He's been completely inactive on all social media, well, except for an abysmal "I stand with Shane" post from the Instagram belonging to his cat, which people suspected to be run by Ryland, but was later confirmed to be simply a fan-run account. So, radio silence on his end. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I truly think that is exactly what needs to happen for him at the moment. It has been proven time and time again that staying off of the internet for an extended period of time and then coming back like nothing happened after said time is an effective way to almost cancel out cancellation, if that makes sense. However, what's the verdict on the case of Shane Dawson? Do I think that he's an awful person? Well, that's a complex question. I don't necessarily think that he's an awful person. That being said, to me, it's very clear that Shane Dawson has never matured mentally past the age of 15 and is a genuinely manipulative human being who knows exactly what he is doing by constantly portraying himself as the overwhelmed empath who can't handle negative attention. In addition, he has been making these atrocious jokes at an age where people have to know better. And somehow, I find it very hard to believe that he genuinely had a revelation about how his jokes were awful when he posted his original apology video a literal week after he released Not Cool. To me, that just reeks inauthenticity and doing damage control for his comedy falling into the lap of the mainstream who would say something about it, and not just his fan base who have proved their undying allegiance to him for years. Now, something that I've seen floating around and I spoke out about on my Twitter is whether or not he should be completely deplatformed. And in all honesty, I think he should, at least for a little bit. For the past 10 years, Shane Dawson has either been blatantly racist for the sake of very bad comedy, or supported people with racist backgrounds on his channel. And in a time where race relations has elevated itself to a daily talking point in everyone's world, I think it would be quite the statement of allyship for YouTube to remove his channel for a year or so. Plus, I think it's rather harmful to portray false sexual allegations as being humbled. But you know what they say? There's always another side to the story. Hello, you have reached Colin Andrews. I can't come to the phone right now, but if you can leave your name, number, and a brief message, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks a lot and have a nice day.
Hey man, it's AJ. Dude, are you doing okay? I've been trying to get through to you for days now. Autumn won't even answer, and she always answers. Anyway, we're all going to Jamie's tonight for game night, and they'd love to have you. Being locked up forever for research isn't great, alright? We're all worried about your health. Anyway, hit me up soon. We're all thinking about you. Alright, see you, man.
A big thank you to our patron, Weston Katecki, and our producer, AJ Ford.